risk of being the first voice that talks, given that I am not the person with living experience.
Bring it on.
You know, a lot of what I do, and Cal and I were talking about this in the break, you know, I'm employed in a hospital to do research. And so a lot of what I am really trying to change is from the moment somebody arrives in an ambulance at the hospital to try and make that a little bit better, however that looks like. And so I know Kate DeCruz and I have done some research with people with living experience in the early phase after traumatic brain injury, looking at how we can do better at goal setting, or setting goals with families and people from ICU from memory, Kate, wasn't it? It's really challenging to level the playing field for people who are going through the hospital system at that time very early, because they're so dependent on hospital care, and so leveling that relationship is really challenging. So I think we are probably missing those early voices. I don't know what the others think, but I do think we're kind of I think as researchers, we have to really reflect on how much power the hospital still has in that relationship, and how we could do better at making it more accessible, because those voices kind of come to us late on reflection, rather than at the time when maybe we could even channel that voice stronger and amplify it better.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. I think that's why, in terms of for a part of the origin of how Genius Network came up, which is, you know, essentially a global community for every person touched by trauma, and we've all got a role to play in that narrative, is that when there is the big, you know, a lot of us hear of the big drop off. And I know in my experience of surviving my stroke and then moving through the rehab process for a couple of years, and then, you know, emerging into community life, there's the fucking drop off is like, there's nothing. And there's also, when you do connect with community, there's not a lot of capacity built in how we engage. And that's really why we, in terms of with Genius Network, we are a capacity building platform and story sharing platform to try and increase through stories. So because we all have stories, we all connect through narrative. How do we actually work from that standing point to amplify the voice, so that you can contribute from whether it's running a coffee club, or contributing to leading, or participating in research? You know, it's capacity building. We have to do it that way.
I'm just stepping in, because I think on the chat I can see, is it Sharon, I think, who wants to make a comment or ask a question?
Yes, sorry. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for amazing presentations. And it's so good to hear these partnerships, and it gives me a bit of hope that it's fine to stumble at the beginning and then get on a journey together and build a relationship, because I'm quite anxious. I'm a researcher. I'm starting this project on co-design, so this forum is good timing for me. My question is about engaging with partnerships where people might not have the research experience, and how can we make sure that we meet your needs in getting you up to speed with research? What are the things? What are your experiences in that? This is for the whole panel. How can we make sure that we get you on board, and that people feel comfortable in the research environment?
When Cal and I first started working together, we did run some training in research.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's right.
And Cal, in Cal's typical way, has a really sweet a story about how he didn't know what an RCT, a randomized controlled trial was. And he thought that was RC, like the word.
I was like, what's an RC?
As a word. And so I think you're right. You know, there is a responsibility for us all to learn from one another. And that means sharing of knowledge so that we level the playing field. And so I think that there is that side of it.
I think that I completely agree with that. And I think that part of the, what I was speaking on earlier about using SAFE as pillars to engage, when we become specific and we remove the clinical barriers of, if the jargon is an RCT and I'm like, what's an Prof and like all that stuff, it's just unintentionally othering. It's completely unintentional. It's systematic. It's a system, and it's totally appropriate in many settings, but it's not in engagement. We need to get to the point of going, how do we find a shared value? You know, even if the project has an outcome, that's great, but that's the project and your agenda as a researcher. But how do we go? We need to find some glue that connects us so that we have trust as we navigate that project, and then, you know, more. But it has to be built on trust.
Here's the thing, though. I'm monopolising again, sorry.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. What I know about research, you can read in a book. Like, it's not special knowledge. What Caleb knows about being someone with living experience of stroke and the insights he has on what things matter, I can't learn in a book. So in fact, actually, the really powerful knowledge that needs to be shared is the stuff inside his head, living experience.
Good luck.
but do you know what I mean? So I think there's a responsibility on us as researchers to make our stuff a bit more accessible, to be honest.
Totally. And just to wrap that up, and not for Tash and I to completely dominate this section of this process, but I think that going back to that, like when I as someone with living experience, you know, I've got diplopia, I have essential nystagmus, meaning that I see double and I'm dizzy all the time. To feel confident to say that to you right now is because we've established a safe space. I feel like we're all here for a shared vision. We've got a mission. So I feel comfortable to go, oh, like, you know, I can disclose to Tash, oh, I'm really struggling with the frigging mask and you know, it's okay. But until we establish the fundamental human pillars, not healthcare engagement pillars, you know, we have to get to the story to get to the solutions.
And I think it's more than just the co-designers that we're working with as well. So there's a million other people out there that we can help in the community. And if we're not speaking a language that everyone can understand, then, you know, that's not part of good science communication or just communication as humans in general. So I don't want my research to only help my, you know, 100 or 200 co-designers. I want it to help the 100,000 people out there living with dementia in Victoria.
This is, I'm just going to interrupt. We've got such an exciting conversation happening also in the chat, and we will take a moment to read out some of those, but I'll also see some very patient people with their hands up. So Glenn, do you want to ask your question? So hopefully I pronounced your name correctly.
Yeah, you did, and thanks. And thank you, everyone. Great discussion. I'm not sure what my question is, but it's around burnout. I work a little in the disability sector, and they get asked a lot of questions that are really onerous to answer, and it's not always clear that the people asking those questions have a direct line of sight to what's going to be valuable for the individual's, you know, experience. So I guess it's a question for the researchers. Do you have any experience of trying to minimize the imposition on the people you're co-designing with? Any tips?
I think if I draw on some of my own experience, researchers love to ask a million questions because we think the data will be useful one day. You know, like we just love the opportunity. And, you know, I work in dementia as well. And, you know, we co-designed, you know, patient-reported outcome tools. And it was very much about asking, well, what are the important outcomes to you? And they got it down to 3. Like, we had a tool that was 37 questions long with different branching logics, but also to burnout in a co-design sense. I think it's really important to understand people's experiences and where they're at, and to communicate, hey, if you're going through a phase where you're not that well at the moment, you can step out of this. We've got enough consumers. Like, don't ever just have one. You know, have a team that you can work with, so it's not reliant on one person to be able to step in and do all of these. And we have rotating consumers. They don't have to stay on, you know, for the whole 12 months if that's going to be too tiring and exhausting, but we make sure we have that voice throughout. So, you know, it's not perfect, but I think burnout is a really, really valuable thing to be thinking about and planning for. And I know even from my own health situations that there's just going to be times when I'm too tired to do anything, and I need to have a safe place to be able to talk about that and say, I can't do this right now.
That's a great answer, Darsh, and there's a lot of consensus from the chat as well, from Emma Power, that, you know, that's why we do need differing levels of opportunity. Anita Goes also said, you know, very mindful of the emotional and physical labour of asking people to work with me, but also just reflecting back on, there was some other comments in the chat as well. Sue Bowden saying she got the feeling from the presentations that there was a recognition of the emotions co-design brings to the table, and teams are taking steps to look after each other during the process. This makes me feel good about the co-design space, smiley face. So yeah, I think that I'm hoping that people who come in, like myself and Colin, into this co-design space, like really genuinely value the people's generosity and the emotional effort it takes to come to this table, and with the fears that come along with that. But we've just finished, you know, our co-design series of focus groups, and I was, you know, coming in as a researcher, really mindful of trying to, you know, get all the practicalities done and make sure we've got scheduled and supported and get through the research side. And I was quite blindsided really at what actually happened that I couldn't and wouldn't and shouldn't have prepared for, which is what the interactions were between the people in the space, and how incredibly kind and thoughtful and caring people were to each other in creating that safe space, and that we had reflections that the focus groups were better than therapy than that they had engaged with, because it was that peer support that was very much organic. It was a very kind of much a byproduct of what we intended to do, but the outcomes from that were just amazing, and will shape then what the future of the project actually looks like. I also want to go to, it says Martin's iPad. You've had your hand up for a very long time, so please, yeah, welcome. And
Hi, it's Nicola, and just want to say thank you so much for today. It's been absolutely incredible. I'm a bit exhausted with putting on a clinical nurse's hat, but a mother of a daughter who's had a young stroke, which I know there's a lot of familiar faces in the room. And I think my question really is, because we're involved in a lived experience working group and project at the moment, my question for the opportunities that we see, I think, from all of the discussion today is there's already so many pieces of research happening, but I have a daughter who had no treatment, has never been involved in any research. I've become involved and met Caleb and surrounding Kate through the Genius Network. I think what frustrates me is there's so much happening all over the place, but it isn't brought together into one place for the living experience. I'm going to change my language after today. And then I guess that research world. So Caleb, I guess one of the questions I put up there earlier was about your vision and mission and how we can all support your vision and mission. But where do researchers and people wanting to do the work and people like yourself and Genius Network and the great way you bring people together all around the world, how can you be that in between, I guess, to connecting those people so they can collaborate. And I mean, I guess that's a question for anyone else who's sitting in the room, because I'm sure if I'd like to be involved and help you with your vision and mission, there'll be many other people sitting in the room today. And I'd also like to say I've followed the Summer Foundation project for a long time, something close to my heart after my grandmother was a young person living in a nursing home 33 years ago. So I think it's great to see after so many years such great work happening. And Sam, I absolutely love listening to your work too. So thank you, and fist pump to you.
So one of the things I think, Nicola, is that, you know, the honest truth is that there isn't probably going to ever be one place to connect. And I guess the type of connection that you're looking for can really depend on whether it is contributing back to research in specifically, I know we worked together on the Young Stroke project, whether it's through the Stroke Foundation in that instance. I noticed in the chat, Anita has put how you can connect with her group, and they certainly, so I think that there is those opportunities. I know the Summer Foundation and Genius Network, you can sign up as partners with them for those initiatives. And I know Darsh more globally, for example, through her work with Monash Partners, she has a consumer, and I'm using the term deliberately because I think it is called a register. Is that right, Darsh?
Actually, we're going to ask the consumers what they want us to call it.
Which, as it should be.
Yeah.
So I guess, Nicola, there's no easy answer, is there? Because, and I'm not trying to fob anyone off, because we would certainly, I know with my research director hat on for Genius, we would love to have people sign up to the platform to be engaged as little or as much as they would like. And certainly I know for someone who regularly works with Brain Injury Australia, Synapse and Stroke Foundation, that I would really love, that they are usually my go-tos for advertising opportunities to be involved in the research and connecting that way. I certainly know for me, I'm really lucky with the groups that I get to work with, and many familiar faces who've dialed in today, which is lovely to see. But I do also know that it takes time to build that trust. And so going through groups that you enjoy working with would be a great place to start.
I think if I can dovetail that just really quickly, because it's really important to, I really want to share with you that when we're all, you know, COVID's amplified the understanding that we're all touched by isolation and we're all touched by trauma in some way, in varying degrees. Yes, Amy, we've all actually part of this tapestry. And when I really believe that when we look at each other and look at our experiences through a social lens and a social paradigm, not a clinical one, not a medical one, but we actually connect in safe spaces. I mean, I've said it 15,000 times today, but when we feel safe, thanks, Sammy. I'm like, I got one good laugh. But when we actually connect and collaborate in these safe spaces and see the human, the story, and we get to that part, that's really what underpins our network. And actually the research will come out of it, the opportunities will come out of it, the trust and the ongoing loop of, you know, roundtable is called a roundtable because it's cyclical. And, you know, we've done numerous, and they just keep going, and people can come onto the train and then get off the train. But the point really is about, I think, something that I do want to really quickly just say, because it was mentioned when you just said it, Darsh, this thing about even the word consumer, and I've got lots of opinion, and I've talked about it at different things. Part of the reasoning behind my position of seeing the word consumer being labelled for someone with a living expertise of an experience being so reductive or problematic in terms of siloing that person into just that experience and really, I guess, reducing that, when we look at someone as a recipient of services as their highest point of notoriety, it's really problematic. But it's not just problematic between us as researchers and people with living experience, and people who have clinical hats and also living experience hats and all the stuff, all the fancy people. But it's actually about the fact that our language and how we communicate is the thread in which we'll get to the goals of finding, I believe, these truly exciting and these strong opportunities for true partnership will totally come from our language. And I just really want to say to all of the fancy researcher people, profs on the line, it's actually your position. You have a lot of power. It's not to say that the power imbalance is in this room, but the thing about wielding your power and your privilege of having that is starting to go, okay, let's find out what the word is. Let's find out how can we go, oh, living expert, we're all doing it. And how do we actually change the systems that keep supporting those things together? So yeah, I just wanted to say it's been mentioned. I think we should co-design how do we create the new jargon. I think that's what we should do, but it'll only come from community.
Maybe that's the next forum, Cal, maybe.
Oh.
Thanks for that. And it's, again, there's some amazing stuff going on in the chat, particularly around aphasia, and how we co-design with people with language difficulties, particularly when there's so much work inherent in co-design. At what point does it get too hard and people actually kind of avoid doing it? But before let's just park that. Marie has had her hand up for a little while, and I'm wondering if Marie would like to ask a question.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got my parent and carer hat on.